Pop culture oracle The Simpsons has predicted more doom and gloom for 2026. For 2026, the predictions range from a new type of flu, and AI taking over jobs, to alien sightings.
We've all seen the screenshots. A grainy frame from 1994 suddenly looks exactly like this morning's headlines. At this point, The Simpsons predicting the future isn't just a meme, it's a cultural phenomenon that makes us question the fabric of reality.
Behold, giant food from the sky!
As we stare down the barrel of 2026, a few specific episodes are starting to look less like satire and more like a roadmap.
Now let me raise this beer to toast. What the?
Alcohol is harmful to humans.
Yeah. Save your breath.
Is Matt Groening a time traveler? Or are we just living in his world? The 2026 World Cup. The most aggressive prediction currently setting 2026 group chats on fire involves a soccer ball and a very specific matchup: Mexico versus Portugal. This rumor stems from the 1997 episode The Cartridge Family, where a TV commercial in the Simpson household screams about an upcoming match to determine which nation is the greatest on Earth. The teams on the screen are Mexico and Portugal. At first glance, it is just a throwaway joke about Springfield's historical boredom with soccer. But as we enter 2026, the context has shifted from a joke into a full-blown digital conspiracy. This year, the FIFA World Cup is being hosted across North America, spanning the United States, Canada, and Mexico. For the first time in history, Mexico is a primary host for a tournament of this gargantuan scale, which automatically puts them in the global spotlight. Simultaneously, Portugal remains a top-tier powerhouse, boasting a roster that combines legendary experience with explosive young talent. Fans have been obsessively dissecting the clip, pointing out that the riot that breaks out in the stadium during the episode mirrors the high-stakes intensity of modern international sports. While the show never actually flashed a 2026 banner on the screen, the coincidence of Mexico hosting the Cup during a year where Portugal is a favorite is enough to make any sports bettor take a second look. However, we need to address the recycled nature of this prophecy. This exact same screenshot went viral in 2014, 2018, and 2022. Every 4 years, the internet dusts off the Mexico-Portugal frame, swaps the caption to the current year, and watches the likes roll in. It is a masterclass in context recycling. Furthermore, the episode suggests the match takes place in Springfield, not at a World Cup final. Despite these logical holes, the 2026 version of the rumor feels stickier. Why? Because the final match of the 2026 tournament is scheduled for New Jersey's MetLife Stadium. In a bizarre twist of geography, there are multiple towns named Springfield, located within a short drive of that stadium. Is it a literal prophecy of the final score, or is it just the internet's favorite recurring daydream? Probably the latter. But the fact that the World Cup is landing on Mexico's doorstep right as this clip resurfaces provides that classic Simpsons synchronicity. It is that weird, itchy feeling that the writers didn't just guess a random sporting event. They accidentally tapped into a future where Mexico and Portugal would be the two most talked about teams in a North American summer. The reality is, it's easy to look like a genius when you've been throwing darts for 35 years. The law of averages. Before we start building a shrine to Homer Simpson or hunting for Matt Groening's secret time machine, we have to talk about the boring reason they get things right: pure, unadulterated math. As of 2026, The Simpsons has aired over 800 episodes. If you account for roughly 20 jokes per minute, that is hundreds of thousands of individual gags, what-if scenarios, and satirical stabs at the future. Statistically, if you predict 100,000 different things, at least 100 of them are going to happen eventually. This is known as the law of large numbers. If I predict that a celebrity will get married, a tech company will fail, and a specific country will have a political upheaval, I am not a psychic. I am just observing trends. The writers of The Simpsons are also uniquely qualified to guess well, because the room has historically been filled with Harvard-educated mathematicians, philosophers, and social scientists, who transitioned into comedy. They aren't just making fart jokes, they are looking at the trajectory of late-stage capitalism, technological growth, and human stupidity. When they predicted Disney buying Fox, it wasn't a magic spell. It was a group of very smart people looking at the way media conglomerates were consolidating in the late 90s and following the logic to its funniest, most absurd conclusion. The prediction is often just a logical extension of a current trend. If you see a car heading toward a brick wall at 80 miles per hour, you aren't a prophet for saying it is going to crash. You are just the only person paying attention. In 2026, we are more prone to noticing these hits because we are constantly looking for patterns in a chaotic world. We ignore the 99,000 jokes that did not come true, like the US becoming a colony of China, or the invention of the Homer car, and hyper-focus on the one that did. It is confirmation bias wrapped in a yellow sweater. We want to believe there is a plan or a blueprint, even if that blueprint was written by a guy who voices a drunk clown. It's comforting to think someone saw this coming. But even if the math explains it, some hits feel a little too on the nose, especially when it comes to the robots taking our lunch. The AI uprising. While the World Cup might be a game of chance, the show's handling of technology feels like a cold, calculated warning. In the 2012 episode, Them, Robot, Mr. Burns decides to replace his entire human workforce at the nuclear power plant with robots to save on insurance costs. It is a storyline that, in the early 2010s, felt like a standard sci-fi parody. However, in 2026, the joke has lost its punchline and replaced it with a sense of dread. As we navigate a year where generative AI and automation are actively reshaping every industry from coding to trucking, Them, Robot reads less like a cartoon and more like a corporate white paper on efficiency. The episode goes beyond just the act of firing people. It explores the psychological toll of a society where humans are deemed inefficient. In Springfield, the town suffers a staggering 99% unemployment rate almost overnight. While that number is an exaggeration for comedic effect, the sentiment mirrors current 2026 economic anxieties. We are seeing reports that AI could displace millions of jobs globally within the decade, and the Stanford reports from this year show a double-digit plunge in job postings for young adults in AI-exposed sectors. The Simpsons didn't just predict that robots would take the jobs, they predicted the specific corporate logic used to justify it. The idea that a machine is better because it doesn't need health insurance, doesn't take vacations, and doesn't complain about the boss. The most 2026 moment of the episode occurs when Homer tries to humanize the robots by giving them personalities, only for the machines to eventually turn on him because they perceive human flaws as a threat to the mission. This mirrors the real-world debates we are having right now about AI alignment and the black box problem. We are building systems that we don't fully understand, hoping they will play baseball with us, only to realize they operate on a logic that is entirely alien to human emotion. Critics back in 2012 called the episode's satire gentle, but from the vantage point of 2026, it feels incredibly sharp. It captured the exact moment when the 99% became a collective, facing off against an automated elite. When the unemployed citizens of Springfield eventually have to save Mr. Burns from his own creations, the show offers its final, cynical prediction. The only way to beat the machines is to prove that being a flawed, unpredictable human is a feature, not a bug. But even as robots take over the office, the show suggests we might be too distracted by our screens to even notice. Virtual reality goggles. If the AI uprising handles our labor, then the show's vision of virtual reality handles our leisure, and the results are terrifyingly familiar. In the 2016 episode Friends and Family, Springfield becomes obsessed with VR headsets developed by Professor Frink. The most haunting image from the episode features Marge and Homer lying in bed, both wearing bulky goggles, experiencing a virtual version of intimacy while physically remaining miles apart in spirit. By 2026, this isn't just a sight gag, it is a description of the average household. With the market now saturated by advanced headsets that have iterated on the early designs of the mid-20s, The Simpsons goggles have moved from the screen to our nightstands. The show specifically highlights the reality fracture, a point where the digital world becomes more appealing than the crumbling physical one. In the episode, people are shown walking into lampposts and falling into manholes because they are so immersed in their digital feeds. We see this today in 2026, as spatial computing has transitioned from a niche enthusiast toy to a daily necessity for millions. The show's prediction wasn't just about the hardware, it was about the social isolation that comes with it. It captured the exact moment we decided that looking at a high-resolution simulation of a sunset was better than actually going outside. Perhaps the most on-the-nose 2026 moment comes from the show's depiction of virtual dining. In one sequence, characters are seen eating digital fudge through a tube while wearing their headsets. While we haven't quite reached the fudge tube stage of human evolution, the rise of sensory-mimicking tech and the normalization of digital-only social spaces mean we are spending more quality time in pixels than in person. The show suggested that by the mid-2020s, our family dinners would be replaced by digital avatars of our loved ones. Today, as remote presence technology becomes indistinguishable from reality, that joke feels like a documentary. The brilliance of this prediction lies in its cynicism. The Simpsons knew that we wouldn't use VR to explore the stars or solve world hunger. We would use it to avoid talking to our spouses. It predicted a 2026 where technology provides a buffer against the discomfort of real life. As we sit in our homes today, strapped into headsets that promise us a better world, we have to wonder if the writers were laughing with us or at us. They saw a future where we would be connected to everything but present for nothing. Before you bet your life savings on a cartoon, we have to address the Photoshop in the room. The art of the hoax. Of course, as we navigate 2026, we have to address the Photoshop in the room. For every genuine, eerie coincidence that appears in an old episode, there are 10 more that have been manufactured in a digital lab. In the age of viral TikToks and AI-generated imagery, the Simpsons predicted it industry has become a high-speed hoax factory. If you see a screenshot of Bart writing a specific 2026 stock market crash on a chalkboard or a frame of Homer standing next to a very specific 2026 political headline, there is a massive chance it was created last Tuesday by someone looking for clicks. The most famous example of this post-facto prophecy involves the 2015 image of Donald Trump on an escalator, which was side by side with a near-identical frame from the show. People claimed the cartoon called it 15 years earlier. In reality, the Simpsons clip was produced after the real-life event happened, as part of a promotional short. The internet simply swapped the dates. We see this constantly in 2026. Trolls take a real event that just occurred, use AI to mimic the show's signature animation style, and then post it with a caption like, Season 4, Episode 12, they did it again. It is a feedback loop of misinformation that preys on our desire for a glitch in the matrix. Another common trick is contextual stretching. This is when a real but vague joke is forced into a 2026 shape. A 90s gag about a bad flu gets labeled as a 2026 pandemic prediction, or a sign in the background of a grocery store is digitally altered to show a modern cryptocurrency logo. These hoaxes work because we want them to be true. There is a strange comfort in thinking that the chaos of 2026 was scripted decades ago by a bunch of comedy writers. It makes the world feel smaller and more predictable. As we scroll through our feeds today, the real Simpsons prediction isn't about the event itself. It's about how easily we are fooled by the technology the show once warned us about. We are living in an era where the line between a 30-year-old cartoon and a deep fake is thinner than ever. To understand how they get the real hits, you have to look at the geniuses behind the curtain. The writer's room. To understand how The Simpsons actually manages to hit the bullseye without a crystal ball, you have to look at the Harvard to Homer pipeline. Since its inception, the show's writer's room has been less of a locker room and more of a think tank. It has historically been staffed by some of the most overeducated people in show business, people with degrees in physics, computer science, and higher mathematics. David X. Cohen, for instance, has a master's in computer science, while Al Jean and Jeff Martin were math prodigies. When you put a group of people with that much brain power in a room and tell them to satirize the future, they aren't just guessing. They are calculating the most likely trajectory of human error. In 2026, we are seeing the fruits of their analytical labor. These writers didn't just write jokes. They looked at the socio-political landscape of the 90s and early 2000s and asked, what is the most absurd, yet logically possible, conclusion to this trend? If you understand how a large corporation like Disney operates, predicting they will eventually swallow 20th Century Fox isn't a miracle, it is a logical projection of horizontal integration. If you understand the growing influence of celebrity culture on politics, the idea of a reality star becoming president becomes a mathematical probability rather than a wild stab in the dark. Furthermore, the writer's room culture encourages deep-cut intellectualism. They often plant complex equations or scientific theories in the background of scenes just to see if the audience is paying attention. This habit of looking at the world through a lens of systems and patterns naturally lends itself to predicting where those systems will break. They saw the early 2000s obsession with tech and correctly deduced that it would lead to a society of screen-addicted, isolated individuals by the mid-2020s. The 2026 Simpsons effect is essentially what happens when high IQ observers spend 40 years dissecting every facet of American life. They have covered so much ground that they have essentially pre-written our future. We often credit them with prophecy, but in reality, we should be crediting them with being the world's most successful social futurists. They didn't see the future in a dream. They saw it in the data of the present and dressed it up in a blue wig and a string of pearls. The final say, prophecy or a mirror? Why we need to believe in the crystal ball. It's on you to believe. The phenomenon of The Simpsons predicting 2026 says more about us than it does about the show's writers. We live in an era of unprecedented acceleration, where technology, climate, and politics shift so rapidly that the ground feels permanent only beneath our feet, never ahead of us. In this state of constant flux, we look for anchors. We look for a roadmap. Ironically, we have found that roadmap in a satirical cartoon about a dysfunctional family that was originally designed to mock the very idea of a predictable, perfect American life. Whether it is the Mexico versus Portugal final or the rise of AI-driven job losses, these predictions serve a psychological purpose. They transform the terrifying randomness of the world into a manageable narrative. If a group of comedy writers saw this coming in 1997, it means the world isn't actually spiraling out of control. It is just following a script that we simply hadn't read yet. It provides a sense of order to the chaos. Even if that order is cynical and yellow, it is better than the alternative, that no one is at the wheel. But we must also acknowledge that The Simpsons is a mirror, not a crystal ball. The show has lasted for nearly 4 decades because it is fundamentally rooted in the observation of human nature. Humans are creatures of habit. We make the same mistakes, fall for the same hucksters, and obsess over the same distractions generation after generation. The show doesn't predict new events so much as it predicts that we will continue to be ourselves. It bets on our greed, our laziness, and our resilience. In 2026, those bets are simply paying out. As we move deeper into this year, keep an eye on the screen, but keep a finger on the fact-check button. The writers aren't time travelers, and Matt Groening doesn't have a magic telescope. They are just the smartest people in the room, and they have been paying attention longer than the rest of us. The true prediction of The Simpsons is that as long as there is a world to poke fun at, there will be a future that looks suspiciously like a joke we've already heard. Whether it's destiny or just a well-timed joke, Springfield always seems to get the last laugh. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the 2026 Simpsons prophecy, make sure to subscribe for more reality-bending breakdowns and cultural deep dives.